Welcome, welcome everyone to another MSI Insider live stream. And as you can see, I'm not alone. I'm here with the one, the only,
Ruud.
welcome, Ruud. Good to have you here again. And for people who visited us earlier and have seen Ruud earlier in our live streams, know that it's time for a technical topic today. Because Ruud, what are you going to show the viewers today?
I hope I can show as much as I've tested before, but it's going to be a challenge to put it all in 2 hours or so. So we're going to try and optimize the system and make it more efficient. So lower the power, lower the temperatures, and not lose too much of the performance.
And also lower the bills.
Yeah, lower the electric bills. That's a hot topic in at least in this country.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We also have a giveaway today, so to participate go to msi.com/2/insider, or if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, you can also follow the direct link that our bot will put in the chat once every 5 minutes. It will redirect you to Gleam. Within Gleam you have several options. The more actions you perform, the bigger chance you'll have to win. And then throughout the stream we will give away several Steam wallet codes, so make sure to participate in those as well. And without further ado, because Ruud, you have a lot to show, right? You have several systems prepared for today.
Yeah.
Not only desktop, but if we have time left, we also have a notebook. Yeah. But let's start with the desktops. Can you maybe tell a little bit about what you have in front of you right now?
At the moment I have a i9 13900K on a Z790 Carbon Wi-Fi motherboard with a RTX 4090 Supreme X 24 gig graphics card, and it's powered by a AI 1300P power supply. It has a S360 core liquid cooler and an MSI SSD. So everything.
So basically, in terms of performance of a gaming PC, this is as far as you can get, right?
Yeah, this is pretty much over the top, extreme. Yeah. Without if budget is no issue for you, then this is a system.
Then a 3900K and a 4090 is probably where you're ending up. Yeah. But you also have a more modest system, so to say, for today. Yeah,
more reasonably priced system, which I think it's
still like a fairly decent
good configuration for 1440p gaming.
And so still a good gaming PC, but not to the extreme, basically.
No, but you can still achieve some power saving there as well without losing too much performance as well. So.
For everyone in the chat, if you have any questions throughout, you want some advice around this topic, Ruud has done a lot of testing, so I'm sure he's able to give you some advice. He tested with different parts. He tested Intel, AMD, also with graphics cards, of course, NVIDIA, AMD, and notebooks as well. So I think he gained a lot of knowledge throughout the past weeks about optimizing, fine-tuning.
It's been very interesting for me as well. So I'm just a nerd, and I see this as a hobby as well. So yeah. So
yeah, because last night, what time was it when you stopped testing?
1 o'clock. Around 1 o'clock. Yeah. Then I couldn't save my file to the NAS anymore. I don't know. They did some maintenance on the corporate network.
They do those things at night.
Yeah, they do usually. Yeah, so I couldn't save and couldn't access the test data from earlier that day. So then I just quit, and and this morning picked up where I left off.
But the cool thing is that you also tested a lot with like the latest generation Intel and AMD, so the 13th gen and the 7000 series. Yeah. Because throughout generations you usually see some differences as well.
Yeah, I've had this system, or close to this system, in a live stream before, but at that time it was just day one release, right? So I couldn't have done all the testing I did today, or did last weeks or so. Yeah. So I think it took about 7 days or so for testing.
So now even more tips and tricks on how people can reduce power, reduce temperatures.
Yeah, there are multiple options, and the more high-end system, the more BIOS options you get, and also you have more options to try. But it also means you can do trial and error. So there's a lot of stuff that don't work or just crashes because you undervolted too much, or lower the power too much or whatever.
And that's definitely part of optimizing as well. So
that's the learning process, but it just takes a lot of time and effort. And
so guys, you may see some crashes today.
Yeah,
it can happen if
This
you're
is-
optimizing, and especially if you're undervolting.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you reach the point where it's not stable anymore,
Yeah.
and then the system may crash, and then you have to increase it a little bit again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let me see. I already see some questions in chat. Will it run the Witcher 3 with RTX update? I think that should be okay. Let me see. Eddie is asking how much tweaking, if any, is done on the Trident X 12 Gen. I have an i7 12700KF and a 3070 Ti. Usually I would say like the desktops are already tweaked a little bit. Sometimes you can get a little bit more out of them, and some of the tips you will see today will also work on full systems. The systems we're running today are both like DIY open test benches, but some of the tips and tricks will definitely also work on desktop. So
yeah,
stay
most
tuned for
tweaking
that.
done by MSI on the Trident X and any other full system is mainly done for the cooling solution. So the fan profiles and the power limits are set so that it can run in any environment. So that's the fine-tuning MSI is doing for the full systems.
Dushan is asking, will there be some graphics alongside live optimization like then and now? We do definitely have some test data to show you a little bit about the reductions you can achieve.
Most demos I do is this is what you get out of the box, and this is what you can do yourself, and see how much you will gain in efficiency or lose in performance, depending on how you look at it. That's the goal for today.
Chemi says, is Stream Elements running? Let me check, it should be running. But I will just quickly confirm with you. Sometimes, because there is a cooldown timer on the bot, so sometimes if it just posted the message, it will take another 5 minutes in order to post it again. But the way around it is always go to msi.com/2/insider. That way you can also get to the giveaway. Let me check if the bot is running. You are on Twitch. So let me check that platform as well. And this is
another
YouTube.
question: can we adjust the power limit and nothing else to reduce the temps? Well,
in some
power
situations,
limit is,
yes.
Power limit is one of the options you have. Of course, to really lower the power, you also need to lower the voltage. And lowering the voltage means things can become unstable. Power limit usually doesn't matter, doesn't really make the system unstable as long as you let the CPU do the voltages and stuff like that. So frequency and voltages. So stuff gets unstable if you push it too far, so too high frequency with too little voltage or too high temperatures, that will make stuff unstable. But usually if you reduce it, reduce the voltage and you push too much frequency, it can also crash.
According to my information, it should be running. I also see Mr. Mastodux is confirming that it's running, so you should be good to go. If you just missed a message, in 5 minutes you should be able to see it again. So Ruud, before we lose any more precious time of today's content, let's get in your testing.
Exactly, yeah. Let's see the system as it is out of the box, or when you just install the stuff, enable XMP. Let me first show you what configuration I got. Then we have everything in one overview. Of course, this is the better overview. So basically we have the i9 13900K together with 2 times 16 gigabytes of DDR5 6000 CL36 memory from Kingston. I think it's Kingston Beast RGB.
Yeah, it's Fury Beast RGB.
Fury Beast RGB. Okay, good. And we have the latest BIOS, of course. We have a Z790 carbon Wi-Fi motherboard, and we have a RTX 4090 Supreme X graphics card. Oh, we also have an MSI M480 2TB SSD in the system.
So quite a decent system.
Yeah, it should be good for anything, really.
Yeah.
If you have the money. And maybe we can just do a quick benchmark for what you will get if you just install the system, enable XMP, and that's it. See what the power and the temperatures do. If you do, for example, the Cinebench is one of the popular 3D rendering benchmarks. It loads every core in your system, and it scales very well with more cores. So the more cores, the better. The scaling of HW info isn't always optimal.
So I hope you guys can read it a little bit.
Yeah.
If you read out the important values, then
yeah,
it should be okay.
The CPU package power, that's the one is interesting. It shot up to 296, something like that. But then the temperature of the CPU shot up to 100 degrees centigrade as well. So that will make it thermally throttling. And this is a 360 water cooling that's quite capable. So if you put this in a case,
it's quite a big one.
it's quite a big one, and this is an open test system, so the cooling is better than usually in a case, and that means that you're not actually getting the full potential of the CPU. So the CPU is able to boost higher than this. The clock speeds were about 5.5, 5.4, something like that. And the score is about 39,500 points, give or take. I've also run other benchmarks. So 3D rendering is a task that will load any CPU to the fullest. But there's also people say, okay, what about video editing or video transcoding? I used Handbrake. You can also run that one. And I used the software X265 encoder. It's a bit heavier than the X264. And if you run that, it will also load the CPU quite heavily. But it won't shoot up to 300 watts, but it will remain at 240, 250 watts. And since the scenes are not equal, so the encoding rate is also, or encoding task is going to be more or less heavy for the CPU. So sometimes the frames, the average frames per second that it can encode will fluctuate and go up and down, and that will also be seen in the package power. Performance cores about 5.5 gigahertz, so slightly higher than the Cinebench one. Maybe we can also show the wall meter.
Yes.
Yeah,
there it is.
So it's about, it's just only CPU load, and it's doing about 450 watts, give or take. So shooting between 440 and 470, I guess.
Yeah.
I think Cinebench one we didn't show, but that should go up to.
The paper is all Ruud's testing data from all the testing he did beforehand.
Yeah, I need a
lot of documentation.
some papers and documentation, because otherwise I lose track and I might mix up some numbers that I've tested before. If you want to see how long it took, 83 seconds, or if you want to express it in many frames per second it did, was 87.6 frames per second. That's good to see. Once we do some tweaking and see what the results are, then we have a baseline and see if we can reduce the power a little bit.
I see some questions in chat, quite a lot. I will pick a few
okay.
out. It
Yep.
will be hard to answer all, so I'll mostly pick the ones out related to underclocking, undervolting, etc. Louis is asking, I have an i5 13600K on an MAG mortar B660M. I put it on light load mode 1. Is this a good practice, or would it be better to do an undervolt manually?
There's actually two questions in it, and basically yes, that's a good practice. That's a good start, I would say. So the light load 1, that's also what I demonstrated with the B660 with the 3600. I think we had a Z790 with that, not sure. But we also put it on light load 1 because the 13600K can do that with a decent power circuit on an MSI motherboard. But with the 13900K, you cannot go up to light load mode 1, but you can only get up to light load mode 6, something like that. I tried mode 2 and that crashed almost instantaneously, so light 1 is even a lower voltage, so that will crash immediately. And that's a quite easy setting. I think everybody can try it without messing too much with the voltages, and that's a really entry level or easy way to start tweaking. And once you want to do more, you can, we will show you in a bit. We can also show the light load mode on this system and see what it does for power.
Sounds
okay, good. So we still remember it's about 250 package power and 280 something, 290 on the Cinebench one. I can also show you 7-zip, but 7-zip is even lighter than Handbrake, the transcoding one, video transcoding. Let's see if we can get the capture card to go into the BIOS. So I'm gonna do the DisplayPort unplugging thing again.
Your quick trick to make sure people can see the BIOS, yeah. Otherwise, Ruud will only see it on his monitor and it won't be capturing.
Yeah.
So Ruud always unplugs the cable at the right time, and then you guys can see what's happening.
It can be tricky sometimes because it's a different signal than the normal Windows signal in the BIOS, but usually it should get there. Now this capture card is much better than the old one. So at the moment it's just running stock BIOS defaults, and the only thing I've enabled is the XMP mode here. Since it's an Intel system, I've enabled XMP. I could have also enabled iExpo, but
these memory modules have profiles for both.
Yeah, normally those profiles are meant for AMD Ryzen systems. Okay, so if you want to do an easy power saving, then we need to go to, I'll scroll beyond it because here it is. And 9 is the default. So the more you go up, so the number gets smaller, the more power saving you will get. If I do mode 1, it will crash and might not even get into Windows. I probably will get into Windows, but if you run the Cinebench one, it crashes immediately.
And this has to do a lot with the CPU you're using.
Yeah.
So basically the higher the SKU, so if you have an i9, you cannot go as far usually as with an i7 or even more with an i5.
I usually go about it this way. Okay, now it's at 9. I want to have 1, but that's probably not achievable. Then go to 5. So if that crashes, then you should be in between 9 and 5. So then you can go for 7, right? So and then narrow it down which one is stable and which one is not. So just to get more efficient testing done.
And it can also differ per CPU. Like one Core i9 may be able to run mode 5, and the other one
might also differ per motherboard. And also it might differ per program, because Cinebench is a very even load, so the voltages and the power doesn't fluctuate really a lot. It's just always max. If you have like a video transcoding part, that will go up and down a lot more, so it might crash as well. And also the 7-zip part, that can also crash. I'm using 7-zip, but you can also use WinRAR or other compression tools. I'm going to use mode 6 because I already tested it, and that gives a good result. I also demonstrated the mode 6 on the previous live stream. But at least we have some easy tweaks everybody can do, or at least test. And it's not going to hurt anything. It's just lowering the voltage a little bit, and you get more efficiency. And if you're thermally throttling, then usually you get even a little bit more performance, because the thermal throttling should happen later or not at all.
Quick question in between. Bushna QM is asking, are you going to walk through the PBO and curve optimizer options to optimize cooling and performance?
Yes and no. Not on this system, it's not a AMD one. PBO is the AMD version of the tweaking part. Also the AM5s are basically already overdriven, so they are already precision boost, overdrive is already enabled, and at least on the MSI bias, so you cannot tweak it that much more. And the curve optimizer can do a little bit, so yes, it will give you slightly more performance, but it will keep the power quite high, so very high, as much as it comes stock out of the bias. So the bias defaults, and the PBO curve optimizer doesn't matter that much, just get a little bit more extra performance.
So you can get more of the power consumption by manually tweaking?
Yeah, manual tweaking got me better results, so we're going to show you that as well. If there's time, we're going to do everything, but yeah, we'll just move on quickly, okay?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to open up HW info, then we have some idea of power consumption, clock speeds, and temperatures. Let's do Cinebench first. I don't know if you can do the power meter camera as well. I think you can just show it constantly for...
There we go.
Okay, so the rendering starts, then the power should shoot up here. So now it's about 270-ish, 269. And before it wants to go up to 300, even higher. And now the temperatures are settling at around 97. So that's close to thermal throttling. But as you can see, also I've missed the power meter, by the way. Did you see what it did?
Yeah, it was like a little over 450, I think.
450, yeah. So 490 is what I tested before, and 438 is what I've tested on the light load 6, light load mode 6. It's a long name, I know. So you can save about 40 watts or something. That's and your performance will be slightly higher. Before we had 39.5, now we have 40.1 or 40.2. So this is a nice saving for, and even getting a little bit more performance out of it.
See a quick question in between by Sub Riley is asking, will this work on the MSI laptops?
No, light load mode is not an option in the BIOS of the laptops, so that's not gonna happen.
So this is specifically a motherboard mode that you will find?
Yeah. I've also tested with a GE7612 UGS, so kind of a similar machine as you're talking about. Not sure about your CPU though, and GPU either, but the one I used was a 12700H, so not an HK or an HX. The HK and the HX are overclockable CPUs. The H is not, so you cannot do any voltage tweaking on that one. And that means you're very limited at what you can do. But we'll talk about that later. Let's do the handbrake as well, just to give you an idea.
So this handbrake encoding.
Yeah.
And in the bottom
Okay,
you can
so
see the power meter.
We had about
currently pulling from the wall.
260 on the power, if I remember correctly. 260 during handbrake encoding, and now it's something between 220 and 205, so let's say 212, 213. We can also do an average or something.
And the full system is now
So this
a
should
little
be
under
the
400
average.
watts, sometimes slightly over. Around 400 watts, I would say.
Yeah. Let's see if I had the same with the handbrake. Yeah, I had 385, that's what it's doing now. But it might consume a little bit more power on the GPU now because it has dual monitor. And I only have one monitor attached, but there's also a capture card here, so that's drawing like 6 or 7 watts extra. Not a huge deal, but yeah, and the power saving is still there. Even if this would do 220, then it would still save 40 watts. I think 40 watts is 10%. So, and that should be without losing any performance. But I forgot what the result we had before. So now it's 87.7. So it's even faster, if I'm correct.
So a win-win situation.
Yeah. I think we had the other one as well, right?
So this is the log from the previous.
Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah.
87.6. Yay! I know it's very similar. So, but easy savings with light mode settings.
Without losing performance.
Without losing performance. This is just the CPU part though. Let's go back into the BIOS and we're going to show you what else you can do. Okay, we're going to do the trick with the display port again. Okay.
And I'm going to ban an annoying spammer on YouTube.
What?
I said I'm going to ban an annoying spammer on YouTube.
Oh, I think I see it, yeah. Okay, so we are gonna undo the light load mode.
There we go.
Just put it back at auto, and yeah, the first thing you can do is do the power limits. So if you let it run, if you have extreme cooling, you can make this CPU go up to 330 watts even.
But you need a very decent cooler in order to do so.
Because it will hit 100 degrees and then it will start thermal throttling. So it's even at the full fan speeds with this one, then the maximum you can do is about 300. And also because the CPU is very small, it's made in a very small manufacturing node, so it means.
So just like physically, it's like.
Yeah, it's really tiny, and there's a lot of heat in a very small surface, so the heat density is a lot. That's the way that's why it's so difficult to cool the CPU, and while it's less of a problem on a GPU is physically is just more surface area, so you have more contact to remove the heat.
And it's also what you see in like high-end desktop platform processors or server processor. They're usually quite a lot bigger. So for example, if you hold a Threadripper, it's
the Threadripper,
a lot bigger than.
It has 4 chips that contains or even more chiplets, and there's a large heat spreader metal plate over it. So that you can cool that with the same cooler, and you can go up to 450 watts. So with this CPU you can cool 300 watts, and with the Threadripper you can do 450. So that's quite a difference. same power or a lot more power, but yeah, just different surface area. So the power limits, basically the long duration power is what we also call PL1, and short duration power is while the turbos are kicking in, you can allow like a higher power for a short amount of time. So for example, if you want to do the Intel recommended setting, I think we also have it here somewhere. Let me scroll up. Now it's at water cooling setting, so basically unlocked. So 4096 watts is the power limit. You have a, yeah, the naming of these aren't really that practical anymore. They used to function well on the Z590, but not on the later models. The box cooler is also a bit of a misleading name, because that's the Intel recommended spec. So if I select that, I'll probably have to save and exit to show you or not. So let me see. Yeah, it hasn't changed until I save and exit. But what it does is the long duration will be 125 and the short duration will be 253. And the time of the duration would be 56 seconds. Oh, I cannot really enter that. It's a pull-down menu. So this is the these are the power limits of the Intel recommended settings for this CPU. So if you have a different CPU, you will get also different Intel recommended settings. But the 253 is what Intel calls the max boost power or maximum turbo power, and we can use that as a good stepping stone, and say, okay, well, we just want to keep it from going above 253 watts. I think that's a good step.
And basically that's also like the division Intel now makes for the TDP. So in the past they had like one TDP value, and now they basically have like a boost frequency a TDP value and a base frequency TDP value. So now you're basically setting it that it can continuously run at the boost frequency TDP setting.
Yeah, for the K CPU and with a Z motherboard, that's supposed to be the normal practice, and also Intel is, I'm not sure if they are recommending that part, but that's what they are telling the motherboard manufacturers since Z690, so since Alder Lake. Yep. So PL1 is PL2 is max boost power. That's the setting we should use, but motherboard manufacturers usually just set it unlimited if the power circuit can do it, right? Yep. But then you will run into thermal issues if your cooler cannot handle that. So we have tried to remove that bottleneck and just cap it at 253 watts. So let's see what kind of performance we get and what kind of power draw it will show.
See, very good question from Mr. Masterdogs. Will there ever come a day where the system can do just as good a job at fine-tuning as manual tuning does? And there is some software designed for by someone for it.
Yeah, I've had this before. And package power we set at 253, but there's some bias bug going on. So these values are not correct. Hang on, let's go back into bias. I've had this one before, so bear with me. It's software.
But what do you think, Ruud? Automatic tuning versus manual tuning. At a certain point, will the automatic take over?
The problem with automatic tuning is that it needs to work on so many different combinations and configurations that it's going to be a very conservative way of tuning.
Because they have to play it safe, even if a certain CPU is maybe not as good as another one. But if you happen to have a good one, then you can get more out of it with some manual tuning.
Yeah. So now I've just bias defaults, XMP, and let's go here. I need to scroll beyond it because there's otherwise I cannot enter it. Okay, 253, 253. Well, if they are the same, we don't need to set the time. Okay.
But Ludio says, cannot see the chat. I can see the chat, please.
Okay. It just stopped.
Monkey's Gaming
Okay.
is asking for a cute BIOS. What do you want, like pink and cats and I don't know. What should we expect from a cuter BIOS?
Okay.
Warner was asking for the notebook about configuration with 12700H and 3070 Ti Max Q. I don't remember what the original
that's very
question
close to the configuration I have, only I have a GE and a 17-inch, but yeah. It also has the 12700H CPU and it also has the RTX 3070 Ti. The Max Q is not used on the 30 series anymore. They just say it's a 125 watt a GGP part. Okay, let's try that again and see if now.
But Lydio couldn't see the chat on Twitch, but now you can.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Okay. Let's see if the power limit is enforced correctly now.
So it should be at 253 watts.
53 something, yeah, like that. That looks more like it. That's pretty close, right? 252.7. Oh, it's 253. And the wall is 580
approximately. Yeah.
Oh, the Steam is messing
Automatically
about.
starting in the background.
Yeah, let's start that again. Maybe I run the Cinebench too quickly.
Yeah,
Background
usually
stuff
it doesn't
still
help the
starting
score
up.
if it's booting up stuff in the background.
Well, the score I had before was about 38 something. 38.1. Yeah, the power is 38.7 we get. So with the light load mode setting we had, I think we had similar power, right? Just a little bit higher, and but the score was better. So because you reduce the power it can consume, the clocks will also drop, and there's a way to get some of the performance back quite easily, and that's undervolting. So let's do that as well. Oh, go back to the bias. So we're going to see a lot of bias screens today.
In the meanwhile, I'm picking our first winner for today. So if you haven't participated yet, go to msi.com/2/insider, or if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, you can also follow the direct link that our bot will put in the chat once every 5 minutes. And our first winner of one of the Steam wallet codes of today is Hydra Kaiser. Congratulations. So please keep an eye out on your mailbox, then we'll email the code to you in the coming days with some instructions on how to redeem it. And if you didn't win this time, make sure to still participate because we're giving away several more codes throughout the stream. Okay, back to you, Ruud.
Yeah, I hope the bias is there, and it is. So that's good. So what you want to do? We're still using the power limit of 253. And we're still using the automatic turbo, so we're not doing manual overclocking or locking the frequencies or locking the turbos. You can do a lot with that as well, but that's beyond the scope of this this live stream, because you can do a live stream for that, and fill 2 hours with that easily. But since you're doing the turbos, let the CPU do all the turbos itself and only limiting the power and limiting the voltage, you can also tweak it quite a bit. If you do offset mode, you have to enter if you want to increase or decrease the voltage while we're trying to make it more efficient. Then you can lower the voltage by a number. And once you start, you can say, okay, I'm going to do 50 millivolts, so that's 0.05. That's an option, but I will spare you some testing because I already did it. And I settled at 100 millivolts, so 0.1 volts. If you go beyond, so 125 doesn't work or isn't stable. So yeah, I just used 25 millivolt steps and then I settled at 0.1. Let's see if we can get some of the performance back. And still keep the same power because the power limit doesn't change. So it's going to cap it at 253. And hopefully the clocks will jump up a little bit because the voltage is reduced, so it can boost a little higher. So that's how the mechanism works. Okay, and we're back. Maybe I should turn off the steam in the background starting.
So it doesn't automatically start when you start the system?
Yeah, it's easy for the games, but it's not easy for the... Maybe F1 will mess a bit with... Okay. It's already loaded, so that's good. Okay. So we should still see a CPU package power of 253, and at the wall we should see...
Let me pull that up again.
Okay.
There we go.
So 253, that's spot on the HW info. You can see that here. And 400 watts. So did we reduce a bit? Yeah, we did.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's quick. And the score is 39 point, let's say 39.4K. So
still good performance, but
yeah,
quite a bit of reduction in terms of power.
Still the light load mode 6 was faster, but it also consumed a little bit more power. And this one improved over the just setting the power limit. So here you can tweak a bit with it. But now we still have like 400-ish power. We should be able to get lower, right? Let's set it to 200 and see what will leave us with, what kind of performance it will get us.
And this is something, if you're fine-tuning your PC through the BIOS, you will be rebooting a lot.
Yeah,
be prepared for that.
That's why I use the batch file, just to get into the BIOS. Otherwise, delete, delete, delete. Yeah, everybody knows that, right?
And there we are again.
Okay, there we are again. So I'm gonna leave the 100 millivolt offset in place. That's the one we set here. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reduce the power limits to 200. Where am I? Oh, I already scrolled past it. Okay, sorry about that. So I'm gonna enter 200. Of course, you can choose anything you like. This is just an example.
It's also something that will very much depend on your cooler.
Yeah. So I think 200 watts is achievable with a very big tower air cooler, or maybe a 240 water cooler. So beyond 200 watts, it becomes more difficult for just any cooler. So between 200 and 300 watts, you need some beefy water cooler.
Carlos K3 is asking, what config are you using, guys? Well, let me put that in the bottom. There you can see exactly the specs of the system that we're currently using.
Ah, cool, it's scrolling.
Yeah, it cycles through all the components.
My monitor's not working, but I didn't plug it in, so that
that may help.
yeah. Now also yeah.
Yeah, there we are again.
Okay, we're back. So now the package power should be reduced to 200 watts and see what kind of performance we still get. So here we should get 200 or something, so that's pretty good. And we get 330 watts on the wall. So that's another reduction of 70 watts. And we came from 490, so
that's a big difference.
160 watt less. And we still get a score of 37.355.
And we started around 40K, right? A little bit underneath?
Yeah, close to 40K, yeah. So the reduction is about 8% performance loss, but we also lost about 160 watts.
That is a lot more than 8%.
Yeah, and efficiency-wise is increased by 40%. So the efficiency, this is just Cinebench, you know. But we can do the same with the handbrake stuff if you want to see that as well. Yeah. Sometimes I forget my own procedure.
Alvin is asking, is that undervolting the CPU could get better thermal or getting slower in performance?
Both.
Yeah, both.
Yeah. The thermal should get better because if I limit it to 200 watts, then yeah, around 80 degrees with this cooler. But I didn't fix the fan speed, so it's just ramping up the fan speeds as the temperatures increase. So that's yeah. I'm not sure we had 67. No, we have the log files. We can double check.
Usually with undervolting, the goal you're trying to achieve is to reduce as much as possible power consumption and temperatures with it, while retaining as much as possible performance. So in the end, you get better performance per watt, so better efficiency of your component.
So we saw an 8% reduction from default to this setting, but we also lost 160 watts. So the efficiency went up quite well in 3D or in Cinebench, so that's a 3D rendering application. If you do video transcoding, then the performance loss shouldn't be as high. We get 86.23, and
we were at 87 point something.
Let's see what the original was.
I believe
this is the one we started with.
Was it 87.7 or something?
87.6.
87.6.
So that's less than 2%. So yeah. And how much power did we lose? At least in my testing, I also lost about 170 watts there. No, sorry, 90 watts there for the handbrake. So you save 90 watts in power and you lose 2% in performance. I'm not sure if you're ever going to notice 2% in performance loss. So yes, in 3D rendering, you might see that your workload needs 8% more time. But yeah, what are you going to do with the system if it's running all cores simultaneously? Get a coffee and come back when it's done. So I think the power saving is interesting for a lot of people. But this is just the CPU part. So maybe we'll move on to the GPU now.
And that's also quite a big one on on this system.
Yeah. We can show you what the power is doing. Well, we still have the CPU reduced, and I can leave it like that. I think it's at an optimal setting now, at least for the relative short amount of time. And I'm saying 7 days is a short amount of time because you can tweak a lot more. You can, with this system you can tweak another week if you want. And you can set up the ratios manually and stuff like that. But then it's overclocking / efficiency.
Hello, NRT and Hussein. Welcome, welcome.
Yeah. 15 minutes late is early. Okay. Anyway, let's move on to the graphics card. I've seen a lot of media doing simply reducing the power limit and then showing that performance is not reduced at all, or at least very little. I also tried that, and I also tried to mess around with the curve editor in MSI Afterburner, but that didn't give me any good results, or no better results than just setting the power limits. There is some, one weird thing about Afterburner and also about what the reporting is doing in GPU-Z, but also in other programs. The power limit is here shown as 100%. So if I have this graphics card, it shows 100%. If I get a 4090 Ventus, it will also show 100%. But those power limits are not the same. Even if I switch this to silent V-bias, then I get a different 100% power limit. So the software will still show 100%, but now I'm getting 480 watts.
But the value is never the same.
Yeah, so it would have been a lot easier if the software just reports it's 480 watts. And if you increase it, not by 10%, but just saying, now you're at 500 watts, right? That would make things much, much more clear. Anyway, at the moment I'm at the gaming V-bias, so the default power limit is 480 watts. If I would switch to silent mode, it would be 450 watt default V-bias power limit. So I was just trying to see, okay, what kind of power will we get when we do benchmarks? And the 40 series is a little different than the 30 series. So the 40 series, if the power limit is 480 watts, like it is with this card at the moment, you can throw any game or benchmark at it, except for Combustor or Furmark, and you will not see a fixed limit of 480. It will always stay below that and might peak up to the power limit. With a 30 series or before cards, if the power limit is 450, it's going to be like a
450
ceiling.
steady.
Yeah, it's rock steady 450, and it's going to cap it at 450. So, and NVIDIA explained that, or at least I've read it in some articles, that the power limit definition has changed a little bit. So behavior is also a little bit different than we would expect by comparing it to the 30 series.
This is also why, like, basically every new generation, you have to refresh your knowledge on this topic as well. So now we're doing this live stream for the current generation, Intel 13 Gen, AMD 7000 series, and now, for example, the 4000 series NVIDIA, but this could be completely different for a future generation.
Yeah. So first let's set the benchmark, or let's set, let's keep the GPU at the default setting. So yes, this is a high-end card, so the default power limit is higher than, for example, the Founders Edition. It's 30 watts more. But when will we see that? So let's run Formula One. Well, since it's a high-end system, we're going to use the 4K resolution with ray tracing, no DLSS, and see if we can push
So
out
basically,
some
the
power.
the hardest you can make it for the system.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's going across the track. That is not what you want to see.
Okay.
So why did you pick
not
F1
seeing-
2022? What makes this game so suitable for your test?
I have some issues with the
Oh, the overlay.
overlay sometimes. Yeah. Hang on. Oh, that's better. Should have made it bigger.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Well, the menu is very user-friendly. That's one thing. I can loop it, and I can have a batch file. So make it like a sort of. I also use it for a stress test on a laptop. It's not the most heavy game. It's not. Yeah. With the ray tracing, yes, it becomes a lot more stressful for the GPU. And I've
But it's
set
very
it to,
benchmark friendly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's also not really long, but it's also not really short. So, for example, Temps is quite short, and this is in between. Okay, so it's 4K resolution. We didn't enable the DLSS here, and the rest is all dynamic resolution is off.
Apparently there was some very loud audio. I tuned it down a bit. Please let me know in the chat if this is better for you guys.
Okay. Was that my microphone or?
No, it was the music in the game.
Oh, okay. Ah, sorry. We didn't check that part.
I already turned it down.
Okay, good. Yeah. Otherwise, you will hear a lot of. I don't hear anything. I don't have a speaker system attached to it, and this monitor doesn't have speakers. So the power is shooting up to, at least for the GPU part, is shooting up to 430 something watts. CPU power is not that much. So our power limit of 200 watts is never going to be reached. So it's no limitation there. And we have about 592,
A little bit under 600 watts.
595, I would say, close to.
Sorry about your ears, guys.
Is it still loud?
No, it's not anymore.
No, okay. So
But some
590,
people are still recovering.
95 on the wall. When you run this with the CPU not undervolted, it's gonna run at 620, something like that.
Yeah, and in gaming usually
Yeah.
the reduction is always a bit smaller because when you compare in Cinebench, you're running the CPU at full load, but in gaming it's never under full load, so the
No.
reduction will
No.
automatically be a little bit smaller than what you saw with Cinebench.
You can also see the bottom fan in the overlay. It's 500 something RPM, so the cooler is not doing much. It's 45 degrees for the CPU, 64 for the GPU. Those fans are spinning a little bit faster at 1600. That's still quite fine. And 420 watts on the GPU power.
Carlos asked me what's the name of the overlay program. This is Afterburner, but
Yeah.
it's a custom
Yeah.
template basically that Ruud made for
Yeah,
this demonstration.
it's actually a template from Riva Tuner, and I've modified that one, so it's not my design at all. It's just I copied and pasted and modified it to my liking, and I proposed this as a overlay to include in our software, but unfortunately I'm the only one using it at the moment. Okay, so with everything at default, or at least the GPU at default, it's doing 98 FPS average. So that's yeah, it's pretty good in this test. And let's see if we can lower that a little bit, or keeping it almost the same but lower the power a little bit. We can do that on the fly as well. So how much power should we set? Not sure why this is. Is it closed? Oh no, it's closed. Okay. And seems to be some scaling issue with the.
See, Joshua is asking, is Afterburner available for older CPUs and GPUs? Well, Afterburner is basically mostly a GPU tool, but you can also display some CPU stuff in overlay, for example, in OSD. But yes, you can also use that for older hardware for sure.
Yeah, the basic settings for overlays in Afterburner in text is just here, and you can say, okay, I want to show in on-screen display in text and in graph. But that's not what I did, so
make sure to use Riva Tuner Statistics Server that you have that installed with Afterburner as well.
Yeah, if you go to Setup and
working.
Plugins, you have an overlay editor. There's a tutorial on Guru 3D website, and also in the forum there is some information there. And basically what you will get is you can tweak this and set up and edit whatever you want. It's not. It's really nerdy. You need to add a lot of data sources. This one and this one come from HW Info. So if this program is not running, the overlay is not showing these results. These icons are internal sensors from Riva Tuner, and this one is from Afterburner. So it uses data from 3 different programs. And that needs to be running, otherwise you will miss out on at least one of them. But that's also maybe a topic for other live stream. For the tweaking part of the GPU, normally the power limit and the temperature limit. Unfortunately, Afterburner doesn't scale with the desktop scaling, so the interface is a bit of a oldie, I would say, but an oldie but a goodie. Normally the temperature and power limit are linked. You can unlink that just by clicking on it, and then you can just slide with the power limit. Since it's a percentage, I just grabbed a number that I thought was suitable out of my head and said, okay, let's try 380 watts. So lower it by 100 watts in power limit. And if you want to do that, then you need to set it to 79. So now it's at 79% power limit, or 379 watts, or close to. Let's see what the Formula 1 makes of it.
The absence of logic is saying Afterburner can be used with any GPU as far as I know. Always worked for me going back to GTX 1080. I've also used with AMD GPUs recently too. Yeah, it definitely works with both NVIDIA and AMD, and it goes back even way older than GTX 1080 as well.
So what was the wall power before? Anybody remember?
Good question. I don't remember that from the top of my head.
So now the power on the GPU is now around 370. It's shooting up to 376 sometimes, and hovering about 370, 378.
Baltic Seal was paying more attention than I did. He's saying, well, hope you see power draw is around 600 watts.
595, I would say, yeah, something like that, yeah.
580, Michiel is saying.
Now it's about 540, so you save 40 watts. And that's a bit of the point I was trying to make. If you lower the power limit by 100 watts, it doesn't reduce the power by 100 watts because it didn't reach the power limit in the first place. So if it's doing 430 watts in this game and the power limit is 480, you can only drop from 430 to 380, so that would be 50 watts, something like that. And that's what we're seeing now. There's about 50 watts saved at the wall. And the performance, we need to see how much we're going to get. So we had 98 before, but 50 watts saved is 9%.
So 98 was your average FPS over the benchmark?
Yeah, 98, yeah.
Insane Amari says, Mandate i9 is a beast. Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, but now it's a tame beast because we lowered the power already by 10 watts or more.
It's a more efficient beast now.
Yeah, 12 watts. So we got 96. So we'll lose about less than 2%. So less than 2% performance loss, but we also lost about 9% of power.
So the performance per watt increased quite a bit.
Yeah, and if you look at if the CPU was also still boosting maximum, then it would be from 620 to 540-ish, 545. That's the power I tested before. So that's a reduction of 77 watts, and the efficiency increased by 11%. That's about what I tested. So, but you can reduce it even more if you want. But then the performance will also
at a certain point will go down more. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I did before was I was trying to aim for the same power limit as the 4080, so the 320 watts. So then you need to lower the power limit to 67%. That.
Also to see if it's then faster than a 4080, for example?
Yeah. I think the power limit at that moment is 322 watts to be precise, or 321.6, I believe that the correct number is. But that's pretty close to the 4080 power limit. But I also tested a 4080, and if the limit is 320, it's not going to reach the 320. It's going to hover around 305 or something like that. So it's not really apples to apples completely, because this one will be fixed and will be capped at 320. But the performance will be a lot better, even with reduced power. So the 4080 did about 69 frames per second average in this test on the same system. So GPU power is getting up to 319, 320, so that's close to the power limit we set.
Total system power is like 475 approximately now.
475, we came from 595, so yeah, 120 watts reduced. And yeah, 620 if you would have had the CPU at the stock settings as well. So yeah, 140 watts, something like that. Close to 140 watts saved.
Looks to be performed quite a bit better than the 4080 so far.
Yeah, but it's going to be reduced compared to the
the original score, basically.
The original power limit, I would say. Yeah. But taking off like 160 watt of the power limit, yeah, it's gotta give somewhere. So yeah, that will be shown in the performance. And this is not the heaviest of games, so this would not reach the power limit at all. I also have Metro Exodus prepared. The only problem with that is that my overlay usually doesn't show, or sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. So it's kind of annoying.
For people who are into cars, this is a bit like comparable to like the fuel flow to your engine. If you would reduce it and it cannot draw as much fuel, then you will also at a certain point start to get less performance out of your engine.
Yeah. And the undervolting is the part that was Ferrari get caught by the FIA. That was not allowed. Yeah. So now we have 90 frames per second on average, and the 4080 with a slightly lower power, but did 69. So
still quite a big difference between them.
Those extra cores in the 4090, even with a lower and reduced power limit, will still be a lot more efficient than the 4080. But it's also more costly.
So even though at stock settings, usually like flagship products are not the most efficient one in the lineup, but once you start fiddling around with it and now, for example, reduce it to the power limit that the 4080 has, you see that the product itself is actually extremely efficient and more efficient than the 4080, for example, even though out of the box it of course consumes more power. But once you just set it to the power limit of a 4080, it's significantly faster still.
Yeah. I was also surprised that in the beginning it's going to be like a 600 watt max power limit of the card. Later they in MSI they reduced that part to 520, I believe. It's still a lot. And 480 is not even necessary in most games, even at 4K and ray tracing. So when are you going to use the 480 part? So
Kellen is asking
something around 400 or 380 is, I think, a very good spot to be in.
McCann is asking, what's the effect on the temperature? Well, with this, you're like taking more than 100 watts off, so it will run quite a bit cooler, because you're still running the same cooler, but your power consumption is quite a bit lower. So you can go two ways with this. You can use it either to get lower temperatures, but you can also use it to maintain the same temperature but make your card even more silent, for example.
Yeah.
So it's always a bit the trade-off, what you do with your fan curve, what you want, what you prefer. Like I would say this card is already very, very silent, even with the higher power limit. So here
even
you
with
could,
the
for
higher
example,
power limit, it was doing like 65 degrees. So
there is a very strong cooler on this specific card.
Yeah.
But it can be, for example, that you're limited in space in your case and you have to use a smaller cooler on your VGA card, and that can make it more noisy out of the box. But with setting certain power limits or undervolting, you can get it more efficient and make your system more silent because of it.
Yeah. I remember the fans were spinning at about 1600 RPM in the first test. I don't know what it was doing when I was running the benchmark with this setting. I can run it again, see what the fans do. I also tested the Temps Extreme. Basically, it got very similar results. Also, the Metro Exodus, that got even higher results because the reduction is higher because it's gonna peak more into the close to the default power limit. So it's gonna reach sometimes 470 watts, which is close to the 480 power limit by default. So the reduction will be more in power, and the performance loss is not that big as well. Of course, you will notice if you're going from 470 to a 320, then the performance loss was about 8%, but the power reduction was 166 watts. So fan speeds still running at 1000 RPM. I must say this is a automatic fan profile, so it's not a fixed fan. So it's hard to compare temperatures and fan speeds together, because then you need to fix one or the other.
Now they're just running along the set curve, basically.
Yeah.
Oof, Michiel, 42 degrees Celsius in summer. Yeah, then undervolting and fine-tuning can definitely make a bit of a difference here.
Yeah, and the fans can go up quite a bit. I mean, not sure what the maximum fan speed is of these fans, but...
Welcome to Babrata. So right now it's like for the tier of system that we're running, it's running very efficiently, like 475 watts approximately,
Yeah.
even though we're running a top-end i9 and a 4090.
Yeah.
That's not a kind of numbers most people would expect from a system like this, I think.
Yeah. But some articles they say, okay, you can easily remove 100 watts. Yeah, you can remove 100 watts of the power limit, but not of the wall power easily.
And that's a big difference, because with the 40 series it doesn't constantly max out that power limit.
Yeah, we did remove more than 100 watts on the wall now with the 320, but it will reduce the performance. And now it's 90 FPS. We started with 98, so that's about 8% lower. So, yeah, are you willing to pay the full price for the 4090 and accept 8% lower performance? Not sure. I think the 2% performance hit is easier to swallow than the 8%. But that's just my opinion. So yeah. So I think the 380 or maybe the 400 watts power limit, that will be somewhere quite good. Not losing really much performance and reducing the power just a little bit, or just enough. Yeah. I think most of the flagship products are overpowered by default. So yeah, there is some reduction to be done without a big performance penalty.
Ruud, what do you think? A good time to switch to AMD?
Yeah. Or you want to see the Metro? I'm not sure if the overlay will work.
I think we'll be short on time then.
Oh, okay.
It's
5. Oh yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the
we have
AMD
around
one.
40 minutes left, so
Yeah. Okay.
let's switch over to the other one. While you're switching the system, I will draw another winner for a giveaway.
Okay.
So if you haven't participated yet, please go to msi.com/insider. There you will find a link to our Gleam giveaway, or if you're watching on Twitch or YouTube, you can also find a direct link to Gleam in a chat. Our bot will post it there once every 5 minutes. Within Gleam you can perform several actions, and the more actions you perform, the bigger chance you will have to win. And our next winner. This looks interesting, Ruud.
Huh? It looks messy, yeah? If it's gone. I hide all the cables underneath.
No, I was talking about the perspective, because I'm not physically sitting next to you, so I can also remove myself.
Okay.
Our next winner for today is Tex Willer. Congratulations, you also won a Steam Wallet code. So if you didn't win this time, make sure to still participate. Congratulations to the winner, and please keep an eye out in your mailbox, then we'll email the code to you in the coming days with some instructions on how to redeem it. And let me quickly go to our capture and switch something. As you can see, no signal because Ruud is still connecting it.
Shouldn't take long.
I'm gonna remove the old one and open up this one. Now you guys can see the system we're running right now. So the CPU is an AMD Ryzen 7 7700X. We're using the MAG Core Liquid 240R liquid cooler, so slightly smaller than the previous system. And MAG B650, I think Tomahawk you're running, right?
Yeah, this is the Tomahawk, yeah. Mm-hmm.
With 32 gigabytes of DDR5 6000 and a Radeon RX 6700 XT graphics card. There we go. already looks quite a lot more modest than the previous system. When you look at it
the
from
card
it.
is much smaller, the water cooler is much smaller, yeah.
So this is more of a common gaming PC that more people will have at home.
Yeah.
Like
I
a
think-
Ryzen 7 with 6700 XT graphics card. So it's like it's a nice 4040p gaming system.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are at 40p and maybe not ray tracing that much, so yeah, just into the high FPS. And I should have an image by now, but
Let me see. Here we do,
yeah, you have, but I haven't.
but you don't.
Okay, hang on for a second. Yeah, now I also have. Okay, good. Let's see if we are at the set resolution of 1440. Yeah, we are. Okay, there we go. Oh, here's the bench loop. Yeah, I can remove. Okay.
McKellen says, I want an MSI test bench. Well, I don't think this one actually is. We cheated a bit.
This is a Cooler Master.
It's a Cooler Master one with
I
MSI
put the stickers on to hide it.
Yeah.
We don't have the
But
MSI.
shout out to our friends from Cooler Master for providing
Yeah,
us with the test
exactly,
benches.
These were provided a very long time ago. We used to have, we still have also the MSI Big Bang acrylic
And that one.
test benches,
Yeah.
but those are from the X58 time, so long time ago. That's more than 10 years ago, I guess. Okay, let's show the summary so everybody knows what kind of system we're talking about. And it's a Ryzen 7 7700X.
It's a lot of sevens.
A lot of 7, yes. On a B650 Tomahawk Wi-Fi motherboard with a DDR5 6000 CL36 also. I thought these kits were C40. And it's a Corsair Vengeance RGB.
I think that's wrong in our bottom spec then, because I think it says C40, but it is CL36 then.
I think the specs are provided by me, and I thought it was 40. So that's a mistake on my part.
So it's
Okay.
slightly better system than you thought it was.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, then that's a very welcome surprise. Anyway, doesn't really matter that much. The memory speed is not going to influence our benchmarking that much. And it's a RX 6700 XT Gaming X Trio. So a card that's a little bit more affordable than the 4090. Also the CPU is more affordable. Motherboards are still pricey, I guess. DDR5 is
Getting
dropping.
a bit better, but
Yeah, it's
still
dropping,
more expensive
so,
than
yeah.
DDR4 for sure.
Should be better in time.
But this type of specs are generally a lot more accessible to a lot of people than
Yeah,
a 3900K and a 4090.
yeah, and this kind of CPU can run anything, also up to a 4090. The only thing is that most people that buy 4090 also have Ryzen 9 or i9 money, so they're combined more with the Ryzen
Even though it
9
doesn't
and i9.
always make sense. So for example, if you're gaming in 4K resolution with full ray tracing on, you will make
Yeah.
it very GPU limited. So in the end,
i5,
it doesn't really matter
Ryzen
if you're
5
running
is
an
fine,
i5 or
yeah.
an i9 or a
Yeah.
Ryzen 5 or a Ryzen 9.
But it doesn't feel good, you know. It
That's
makes
true.
sense so for your for
But
your
in
brain
terms of
it's fine,
performance, if you're going all out on your graphics, usually an i5, a Ryzen 5 will give you the same performance as
yeah, true.
a Ryzen 9 or a Core i9.
Yeah, and the Ryzen 7 also can do quite well in rendering tasks or any other CPU-heavy loads.
That is a nice middle-of-the-road CPU, 8 cores, 16 threads, so it's
Yeah,
good for both gaming and also the
yeah, and efficient
heavy
as well.
workloads.
So,
Yeah.
one thing that was surprised me for the AM5 or for the Raphael series is that they allowed a higher power than the previous generation, and that's what makes this system also tweakable. So it's actually still overpowered. That's what we're going to see today. Let's first run default, so basically only did BIOS defaults plus XMP, and that's it. So this is not an Expo memory kit. This is, I should have swapped those two. Well, I thought this was the C40 kit, so I thought it would suit more the Ryzen 7. Anyway.
And that's the benefit about having a XMP on your motherboard, because you can still use the XMP profile on this memory kit. Even if you don't have an Expo profile, you still can use the XMP one.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if there's already a lot of Expo kits around that are actually tweaked towards the Ryzen.
I think it depends a bit. Some kits are combination kits, so they have both XMP and Expo profiles, but there are also like some dedicated Expo kits.
Yeah.
And they are probably tested and verified more with AMD rather than Intel.
Yeah.
If
The
they're
combination
dedicated
kit
Expo.
we have has exactly the same timings for Intel XMP as a Expo, so they could have chosen either way.
So you can also activate a XMP and you will get similar results than with the...
Exactly the same results, yes. Yeah, that's my point. Anyway.
But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe different with the dedicated Expo kit. But I think we only have combo kit at the moment.
Not sure. So, of course, this CPU was not going to perform 40,000 points, but it's still going to achieve quite nicely.
But yeah, this is an 8-core, and the i9 nowadays... Ooh, quick math.
What, sorry?
How many cores does an i9 nowadays have? Because you have the...
32.
Yeah, indeed.
16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, not all of them have hyperthreading. Only the P cores do, and the E cores don't have hyperthreading. On this CPU, it is 8 cores, but all of them have hyperthreading, so it's easy calculation. It's just 8 cores, 16 threads in this case.
Yeah.
For Intel CPUs, it becomes a bit of a calculation nowadays, because how many P cores does it have? And each P core provides you with 2 threads, and how many E cores does it have? Each E core provides you with 1 thread. So it's a little bit of math before you know the cores and threads on an Intel CPU now.
Like the i9 wanted to do like 300 watts. This wants to do about 145 watts.
That's quite a difference.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a difference, and the performance is also about half. So Cinebench per watt, package power, very similar.
Yep.
So that's very good. Efficiency-wise, that's not bad at all, but we can tweak that. So we have, did you see the wall meter? No, I also forgot.
It was too quick.
Yeah, let's run it again, it doesn't matter.
The multi-thread is quite short for Cinebench. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it used to be
so
a very
we're
long
running
test.
at between 235 and 240.
That's quite a bit higher than, but I think that's...
I know multi-monitor on AMD graphics cards is usually a bigger impact than multi-monitor on NVIDIA.
With one monitor, I would get 209.
Yeah, but I think it has been like this for multiple generations, that the power impact for multi-monitor on AMD is just bigger for some reason.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Doesn't really matter for our test, but yeah. So we got 230 something on the wall.
235, 240 approximately.
145 dropping off to 142, 43. So let's say 144. That's a nice average. Let's see if we can. Oh, okay. So lower that. Should also do the handbrake, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I could have just dropped it on. Okay, and drop it here. Doesn't matter. All right. I have a benchmark. So power-wise, is not going to change that much. It's a little bit lower, 140-ish, 42. Close to the Cinebench one, 240 on the wall. So even higher on the wall than it was on the Cinebench one.
Very Loki says, I'll probably stick to my Ryzen 9 5950X. Actually, that is also a very efficient CPU. If you look at purely efficiency, 5950X is a very efficient CPU.
The 7950X is more efficient, but
Yeah, also
out
newer
of the box,
architecture. Yeah.
they're going to allow a lot more power.
Yeah.
So it's going to run at 230 watts instead of the 140 watts you're using. So if you tweak the I could have also used the 7950 here, but I specifically wanted an AMD CPU and an AMD GPU, so I could show both NVIDIA and AMD GPUs and an Intel CPU and an AMD CPU. But this time I didn't go with the 7950 because I wanted to make a more reasonably priced config.
Because we're already showing
Yeah.
a Core i9, of course, so then
Yeah.
also going with a Ryzen 9 would be a bit much maybe.
Yeah.
So this is
So
a slightly more
Cinebench,
modest system.
With the 7950, you can take off 90 watts and lose very little performance.
I think it's becoming a bit of a trend, not only for CPUs but
Yeah.
also for GPUs, that they are pushed beyond their efficiency sweet spot.
Yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
this power limit is set by AMD. So you can also tweak that, so you can give it even more power. But it's like this: the 5000 series, if you want to do extra power, you needed to enable the precision boost overdrive, also known as PBO, and then you can set higher power. But with the 7000 series, PBO is already enabled out of the box, so adding more power doesn't make sense because it's already auto overclocked. So we are, well, I'm going to call this 60 FPS, okay? 59.99 FPS.
well,
That's our baseline.
if 60 FPS is like your psychological minimum, you won't be satisfied with this.
Well, for I think video encoding is not that bad, and especially if the i9 is doing 76,
Yeah, then it's
that's not that bad.
well, it's not that bad at all.
So while the Cinebench was double the score, this is much closer. Why? Because this one has 16 threads, and that's about the maximum the X265 or the HEVC encoder can use. At least that's what I've heard and seen in.
Whereas Cinebench just scales on with however many cores and
Yeah.
threads you have.
No,
So Cinebench also
there's
when
a
you
limit
use
of 64, I believe.
yeah 64.
Yeah, something
I think
like
that's
that.
also the maximum we've been using. Like
Not
with
sure, because when I was testing that part, it was Cinebench 20. That was up to 64, I believe. 64 threads. And that was with a Threadripper.
yeah.
But the latest Threadripper, I could also use the Cinebench 23 without too much problems.
I think it's scaled well.
Yeah. So that's scaled up to 128 threads.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. Anyway, so that's our baseline for out-of-the-box scores. Let's go to the BIOS and do some tweaking, right?
Yes.
I think I have to do the same trick. Let's make sure it's not going to this monitor, but going to the capture card.
Maybe we have to take a fewer steps in between. Otherwise, we cannot show the laptop anymore.
Okay, yeah. Basically the same as with the Intel is if you cap the power with a power limit, in AMD it's called differently, we'll show you in the BIOS, then it will reduce the power because the voltages stay the same. So with a lower power limit it cannot boost as high anymore. With just the power limit in place, it will score considerably less. So in order to get back some of that performance, you need to undervolt again. And there's actually a few ways of doing that. So you could go into AMD overclocking, go into precision boost overdrive, and go to advanced. There's some other modes as well. So we showed that before. here it is. So you can also have the config TDP. So these are some presets that our BIOS team made up for you. Basically 125 is, the 105 watt is the same power limit as the 5950X would get, right?
So the
125
5000 series had
yeah.
it for, I think from the 5800X and everything above had a 105 watt TDP.
Yeah.
And the models below had 65 watts.
Yeah, and the 65 times 1.35 will equate to 88 real watts. So yeah, so the TDP watts are a calculation in AMD's definition. But we're gonna just set it manually. Let's see. So what you can do is, and here you set the package, the platform package total power or something. Total package power, something like that. I don't know. You can just enter a number and just go with 95. That's what I did. I spent a lot of time testing the Intel one. I also tested this with the curve optimizer. You can find that here. The curve optimizer, usually if you go with the all core, of course you want to go with the negative, so lower the power, lower the voltage. If you want to overclock, you might go up.
Go positive.
Yeah.
Then you're not saving power.
Yeah, you can enter 50, but it doesn't work. Then you can set it, the highest is 30. I'm not sure what the 30 means. Is it 30 millivolts or whatever? It doesn't say, but this is the maximum you can lower it. If you do that without the power limits in place, the power will stay at 145 watts in Cinebench, and you will get a slightly higher score. So 1 to 2% higher performance. But that's about it. So with this CPU, so with the 7950, I didn't see anything. So no performance increase, no performance decrease, no power increase, no power decrease, nothing. So that one was already out PBO'd, I would say. There's no more tweaking to be done there. I'm not going to use that now, so it will increase performance, but it will not decrease power. So what we can do is set the power limit at 95 watts, so already reducing 50 watts of the power limit. Not exactly, because the power limit was 141, so we are lowering it by 46.
Yeah, correct.
46 watts. To be precise. So what you can do is basically the same. To get performance back, you will get into the core voltage and do offset mode again and do minus. And what did we do before? Yeah, you can with this CPU 140 millivolts is spot on.
And that is specifically this CPU. So
yeah.
not every 7700X.
This system, this config, with 150 millivolts crashes. 140, stable.
And this is always trial and error. So with
Yeah.
your own CPU, even though it is
Yeah.
also a 7700X,
But
this can be different.
I started with 50 millivolts, then I started with 100 millivolts, then I started 150 millivolts.
And
then I knew between 100 and 150 is somewhere the sweet spot. So I went to 120. That was good. Then I went to 140, that was good. So yeah, maybe between 140 and 150, there's even more to be gained, but I thought was, okay, those are small pickings, so let's
And
leave
you
it at
can
that.
maybe just push it over the edge, and in certain situations, it's not stable anymore.
Yeah, so let's see what this results to in power and performance. I didn't check cooling, so yeah, not really sure what it did before. Should have made screenshots and we could have compared.
Islander Highlander is saying, I built an AMD 5700X with MSI B450M Dash Pro M.2 Max motherboard, 32 gigs of RAM, looking at my hands on a GPU that's not overpriced. I would say like for a system like that, like this AMD 6600 series are quite nice. So 6600 XT,
Yeah.
6650 XT maybe, depends a bit on the price in your region.
Yeah.
But those are quite nice mid-range cards to combine with the 5600X.
Yeah. Last time I checked, those were priced very competitively. Bang for buck, they were really good. Yeah. Okay, so we're back and let's see power. Power performance. Oh yeah, this is another system, so now Steam is also loading in the background again. Yeah,
Auto startup.
didn't disable that here either. Okay, Cinebench, let's run that. So we had 145, 44, and let's say 144.
144 approximately, yeah.
And now we're getting 97. And at the wall we're getting 182-ish.
Yeah.
What was it before?
Ooh, chat, help me out. my memory is not that good.
Now you wanted to demo the memory game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
later on we will do that. Maybe I should play that more so I train my
Yeah,
memory.
training, yeah. I can just check it here. I think it was 238 something.
Yeah, because you said it was lower
240
with your single
240
monitor
with the
setup.
handbrake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 238, and then this is 180. There's about 58 watts we lost, and we
But
didn't
you barely
lose,
lost any performance.
we didn't lose any performance at all.
Huh?
So that is really good. And 97 watts.
So
yeah,
this is very
equates.
easy power saving on your CPU.
Yeah, and no loss at all. So
No loss at all.
Yeah.
So same performance, way lower power
Yeah.
consumption.
Let's compare that with handbrake and see if that also gets the 60 FPS we saw earlier.
And this is especially interesting, for example, if you're interested in like I am, in very small form factor builds. Today's CPUs can be quite challenging if you have limited space for cooling. So if you're going for a single fan radiator, so maybe 120 millimeters, or in my personal situation, even 92 millimeters, then it becomes pretty tricky to run a 7000 series CPU, even a Ryzen 5 at stock. But once you fine tune it, because the ARC much easier to cool.
Yeah.
And not losing any performance. So that way, all of a sudden, it becomes accessible to build in a very small case. Whereas on stock settings, you wouldn't really be able to.
Yeah. I would say it's about 50 watts saved here on the wall.
Yeah, approximately.
It was about 240 something like
Yeah,
that.
I think
so,
235, 240. Yeah.
So 53
range.
watts, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
But that's a big
Same
step,
ballpark.
especially if you see that the Cinebench score is basically identical.
Yeah. That translates also to the video encoding, and it also translates to the like the compression, file compression, stuff like that. So usually, the lighter the task, the less you will run into the power limit.
It's more than a 20% reduction in energy consumption.
Yeah. It's pretty good. Yeah. The efficiency goes up by 38% if you just look at the
CPU.
Cinebench per wall watts. Or handbrake, it's also 38 if you look at frames per second per 100 watts at the wall. Why per 100 watts? Because then the number would be easier to read than if I just per watt, then it would be 0.38.87 something like that.
So guys, if you're running a 7000 series AMD, definitely look into fine-tuning it a bit, because there's quite a lot to be gained in terms of efficiency. Like the architecture itself is really efficient.
And the tweaking only costs time. There's no risk involved. Only thing
The biggest
you can
risk
do
you
is
have
crash.
that it's unstable, it will crash, and you try again and you raise it a bit again.
But the handbrake is a little bit slower. It's 58, so 60 to 58. So that's a 1.
But still, compared to the power
1.6
reduction, it's very small.
1.6% slower or something like that. So yeah, that's pretty good. let's do AMD GPU
Yes.
with the launch this one as well. Yep.
The 6700 XT graphics card.
Yeah, I've been tweaking with the power limit, also with the core clocks and with the core voltage. I've tried the curve editor, so I already tried a lot, but the power limit with this card I can only go to -6%. So that's not gonna get me very far if that's the only reduction the software is giving me. So you should tweak the core voltage. You can tweak even more with the core voltage and the core clock. So if you reduce the core clock also a little bit more, then you can not lose that much performance and still tweak a little bit more. But the trick is to test, for example, how low can you go with the voltage, because that's where the power consumption is going to be reduced. Wait a minute, we first should do a run without undervolting, otherwise we don't have a baseline. Let's use Formula 1 again. So I shouldn't have tested all the time spies and the metros and the other stuff, Combustor, Cyberpunk, all waste of time, apparently. I'm not going to show it in a live stream anyway. But it was fun doing it, so I'm not complaining. Okay, so baseline, Afterburner is back to the defaults. So only the CPU is a little bit undervolted a little bit, but in games you won't see that much because the power limit will never be reached anyway in gaming. At least not this game. I was also, by the way, I'm running a different test because it's a different graphics card. I'm running a 1440p Ultra setting without ray tracing, without FSR. Because I think that's a very common setting to run on this kind of setup. So no 4K, no ray tracing, nothing of that. So the card is pulling about 190 watts at the moment. And the CPU is doing, now it's doing 60. In my testing it was doing 70 without the undervolt.
Okay.
So still lost 10 watts on the CPU as well.
Yeah. And now 340, 345 from the wall?
345.
Yeah, around 345 right now.
Oh, I had 352. Oh no, wait. I didn't undervolt the CPU.
Ah, okay.
I don't have this combination tested. So no.
Yeah, it hovers a
so
bit.
I lost 7 watts on the CPU on the wall.
But yeah, now you're running dual monitor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but the CPU power, or the GPU power, is almost the same. It's 190, 190. So.
I'm gonna write it down this time. 345 watt from the wall.
Very
Last
good.
time I forgot. Okay, so currently 190 it says now on the GPU, around 60 CPU. Okay.
And it did about
174 FPS average.
174. Okay.
I'm gonna write that down as well. 174 FPS.
Okay. And it did about 1600 RPM. Actually, it's doing now 1600 RPM in the menu as well.
1600 RPM. Okay.
Yeah, if fan speeds is also important, then yeah, we're gonna.
Got it.
The good thing about this is that you can just do it on the fly as well with the afterburner. So reducing the voltage, there is a point that stuff will gonna crash, and especially with the GPU, you need to run multiple games because different games respond differently, have different voltage and frequency curve things going on.
So one game will run perfectly fine, and then you're in a multiplayer game, and halfway, bang.
Yeah, that happens. So if you have 15 games, and if the first game is the heaviest and that will crash, it makes your testing easier. So, so if the 14 game crashes, then you think, oh my God, I have to do everything again. So yeah, well, what worked for me for this setup is lowering the voltage to 1100. I could reduce the core clocks a little bit, but then you were going to lose some performance as well, or more than just setting the core voltage to 1100. I also reduced it to 1050, and I also had 1150 and 1125 and stuff like that until you settle for a number that works for this setup. So it's a lot of trial and error.
Edwin K is asking, by Intel and AMD, what is the safe power lowering voltage without problems? It is impossible to say because it really depends on the specific chip.
Yeah.
In general, I think it is safe to say that the higher end SKU you have, the less room you have to undervolt. So for example, if you're running a Ryzen 9, you won't be able to get as much of an undervolt as what you will be able to get with a Ryzen 7 or even more with a Ryzen 5. But even then, even for the same CPU, you will always have differences from one to another. So it's impossible to give like one clear answer that you will never have problems, because basically when you never have problems, it will be quite a high voltage that basically any CPU can run. And if you want to do undervolting, you basically want to find the sweet spot for your specific CPU.
Yeah.
So yeah, the safe way is always just run the out-of-the-box settings. Then you shouldn't experience any problems. But yeah, undervolting, I would always suggest trial and error with it. Just see when does it become unstable, and then from that point you increase a bit until you have it stable, and then you know what your CPU can do.
So in absolute numbers, you're correct. This, for example, the Ryzen 7, I can undervolt with 140 millivolts, and the Ryzen 9, the 7950, I could only lower to 75 millivolts. So that's a very, that's just a small. You would expect it's a small reduction, but since it has a lot more cores, consuming a lot more power, that reduction of smaller voltage
translates into quite many watts.
In much more power saving. Yeah. So it's what you're gonna consume at the wall that you have to pay to the electric company.
Yeah. So even though your undervolt may seem smaller, because you set a smaller number in the BIOS, it may still be big in energy saving.
Yeah. So you had 345 something on the wall. Now it's 304.
Yes, 345, and now indeed
305. So it's about 40 watts.
About
saved.
40 watts. Yeah.
And 190 on the GPU power in the overlay, and now it's about 175. Sorry, 157. Sorry.
And this is only the GPU, because the CPU was already undervolted.
And what was the score? 174. Now we have 172. So that's
so you lose 2%. What was the fan speed, by the way? Because here it was 1600 RPM.
If you let it run in a menu, it will spin up to the same speed, I guess, or just 100 RPM lower, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So slightly
about
more
1500. Yeah. 1400. 1300. I must say the AMD fan ramp is a little bit different because it goes up and then it comes down a little bit and then settles. So that it's different than the NVIDIA one. So I think 1200 is could be the settled RPM. So losing 400 RPM as well. So less noise, less power, only benefits. The only difference is that you will lose about 1% in performance.
So Ruud,
That's not much.
before we end it for today, shall we do one last demonstration with a notebook?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. But I had so much more testing. Anyway.
There we go. Yeah, we're limited on time, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. But then I think, oh, maybe I can try this one. Oh yeah, what?
And that's the thing with undervolting. You can fill like a 24-hour stream without any issues, especially if you're running different platforms. And there is a lot to fiddle around with.
And then, is it stable? Yes or no? And then you have some other issue, a software issue, whatever. And I think, did it come because I did undervolted it?
The story ends as saying, never considered undervolting in the past, how times have changed. Yeah, I think it definitely, like in the past, overclocking was the way to go, but now you see that most CPUs, they already boost so far out of the box that the overclocking headroom you have becomes very small. But nowadays they're even pushed so far that making them more energy efficient can be really interesting. Eric is in the chat. He says, Ruud, next time ask Peter. He can talk for hours. He sure can.
Let's see.
Midnight War says, am I hearing MSI will do a 24-hour PC tuning stream? Unfortunately, the office isn't open 24 hours, so it will be difficult. By the way, while Ruud is connecting this, I will draw another winner. So if you haven't participated yet, last chance to participate, go to msi.com/2/insider. Or if you're watching on Twitch or YouTube, you can also follow the direct link that the bot will put in the chat once every 5 minutes. And that will redirect you to Gleam. The more actions you perform there, the bigger chance you will have of winning. And our next winner, Ruud, the honor is all yours. I'll make it a bit bigger.
Oh, Vilinsecto.
Congratulations, you also won a Steam wallet code. So please keep an eye out on your mailbox, then we will email it to you in the coming days with some instructions on how to redeem it. Congrats. Okay, Ruud, honor is all yours again.
Okay, so this is the desktop of the GE76, no sorry, Raider. I always say GE because that's the old way of the names.
I can also cheat.
Our marketing is always pushing us.
I can just put it in the top corner. There we go.
It's a MSI Raider GE7612UGS, to be precise.
Oh, there's also a GS.
Yeah, the G and the S means it's a RTX 3070 Ti. So the S stands for Ti, and the G stands for 3070. If you would have an H, it would be a 3080. If it's a HS, it's a 3080 Ti. That's a bit of the naming rule, and yeah, it's confusing. Anyway, these are the specs. So it's an Intel 12700H, i7 12700H, and the motherboard is not important because it's integrated and it's a 3070 Ti laptop GPU, and the power limit of this GPU is 125 watts. The power limit of the CPU is set to unlimited, but in reality it will be limited by the cooling solution, as I will show you. I should have connected the mouse. I have a mouse, why don't I use the mouse?
It's always more convenient than a touchpad.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, now let's put it here. Then put this one on this side, would be more natural for me. Okay, better. Okay, scaling is always a thing. Shall work, I think. Okay, so watch the package power. That's this menu when I do the Cinebench. Cinebench loads all the cores, and there should be the core temperatures. The core temperature should be this, the package temperature. Hang on.
Star Citizen 88 says laptop will suffer overheating issues after long gameplay. A lot of thing with today's laptops is basically it will max out what the thermals can do. So it won't overheat, but at a certain point it will just thermal throttle.
Yeah, it's by design.
Yeah.
They made the cooling solution. No, the CPU turbo boost it responds to the temperature really quickly. So it reduces the power. It reduces the clock speeds and maximizes the power this cooling can do. But it's gonna thermal throttle anyway. That's what people think, and that's also what's happening. But it's not reaching like over 100 degrees, but it's gonna shoot up to 95, and that should be the limit, because desktop CPUs normally have the 100 degrees thermal throttle. With a laptop, they're gonna set it at 95.
I think
just to have
AMD CPUs also have 95.
They
right?
also have 95, yeah, indeed, yeah. Oh, we forgot to check the package power and the wall power.
Let me.
Yeah, we're too late already.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
too quick.
It went up to 123 watts in the beginning, and then it dropped off to 68 watts. And then it reaches 18,000 points, Cinebench, 18.1. I think that's very good. 95 degrees is what this cooling will settle, up to 68 watts. Yeah, maybe a little bit. I think it's 96 watts in the end. This
Yeah,
is
it's
the lower
96
part
watts.
already, yeah. Then most of the threads were already finished. Yeah, you can leave it at this, and let's run it again and see what the peak power is at the wall. It's doing 180.
Yeah.
Yeah, 185, and then it drops off to 170, and then it gradually lowers. So if you see your CPU on an MSI gaming laptop reaching 95, 96 degrees, that's pretty normal. But you can lower it. Normally you would have the MSI center installed. I removed it because we're going to use the BIOS to tune, to tweak stuff, or at least I was going to try and tweak the stuff in the BIOS. I ran into some limitations because this CPU is locked for overclocking. So the maximum power it does is about 123-ish, depending on the thermal headroom. Now the performance is a little bit slower, but yeah. Maybe the thing was already heated up a little bit more. If you look at Intel XTU, you can also see that the default, the long and short duration power is set to 200. Both are set to 200. So basically that's unlimited. This cooling can never do 200 watts on the CPU. So what can you do? Of course, if you have MSI Center installed, you can choose, for example, balanced or silent mode, and that will lower the power limits as well. And I think silent mode will work very well in a lot of situations, except for gaming. Because then, not sure on this model, but on most models, the power limit of silent mode usually is the 45 watts the CPU is designed for, or Intel recommended, and in games you will lose some performance there. So what is a good spot? Well, I've been testing a lot of that, and I also show you where you can tweak that, and hopefully the capture card will get the BIOS.
Because you found a hidden setting for that in the BIOS, right?
Yeah, well, let's show you how to get into the hidden BIOS settings. Some of you might already know that, and some people won't, but This is the normal menu you will get. So advanced will show you some BIOS updates at the bottom, and boot settings, security settings, and save and exit. So this is the main setting. If you press the right Control, Shift, left, Alt, F2. Yeah, it's a whole combination. And then in advanced you will get a lot more settings. And there's even an overclocking performance menu. Unfortunately, we don't have an overclocking CPU in this machine, so I cannot show you this. And it's not a big issue because I think the HK and the HX CPUs, they are nice, but they are also expensive. So for most gamers, the H CPUs are just fine. The i7 12700H is very, very good. So we cannot really do anything here. You can enable it, but it doesn't do anything. You can still not do anything in XTU either, so I also tried that part. But there are some stuff you can do. So if you want to do power and performance, you can do two things. You can just set the power limits. The power limits are set here. They're set in milliwatts, so you have to enter a lot of zeros. So here the default is 200,000 milliwatts or 200 watts. Yeah, they could have made it a little bit more user-friendly.
It's also what we saw in the
It's a
XT.
hidden bias setting, so it's for nerds, it's for engineers, and yeah. Well, there's a lot of people already know how to get into this hidden bias set menu, but the more people know it, the more they can play with it. Well, if you do power limit 1, that's the long duration power limit, and the power limit 2 is the short duration power limit and set by the time window. This cooling can easily cool 75 watts, no problem, forever. Well, I didn't test forever, but at least a very long time. And if you do Cinebench and you let it run and loop and whatever, then temperatures won't be an issue. Won't be 95, won't be over 90 at all. At least not in this environment. I don't say if you take it into a sauna or maybe in a very hot climate, then maybe it will go higher. But here it's about 20 degrees Celsius in the room. Then it will probably stay below 80. So the long duration power I would set to 75, and the short duration power, let's do 90. You can go higher, but it's going to drop off so quickly and it will just add a lot of fan noise. If you want to, oh, I cannot enter a number here, so you can reduce this one, so you will still have the burst speed. Even 8 seconds is enough for most short duration stuff. And this seemed to be already very good for not losing that much performance and still have lower fan speeds and also better thermals. I didn't measure the outside temperatures, but I just recorded the CPU temperatures in HW info. So this is the TDP configuration. There's another way of reducing power, and that's in the Core AI VR settings, voltage regulator settings. I have to scroll down. I hope I can get it. Oh, that's a pity. But here it says voltage limit. If Mike is going to move a little.
Wait,
or
fix
hide
this
it,
for you. There we go.
Yeah, VR voltage limit. Yeah, I also tested that one, and I didn't write it down. That's a pity. But I put on in. I tested 1200 and 1150, and if you do 1150 in Cinebench, it will drop to about 72 watts or so. So very close to the 75 watts I already entered. But it lowered the power more in Handbrake, for example, and I got lower scores there. So the power limit gave me better performance and better overall results. So yeah, you can play with this as well. So I got it from Reddit, so somebody already showed what you can do with a CPU that's limited, like the 12700H, which is not suitable for overclocking. So this is a bit of the hidden settings in the BIOS. There's a lot of other stuff you can do in the hidden settings as well, but some personal preferences. Most of the settings in this hidden section can also be done in MSI Center. So if you want to switch between discrete GPU mode, which this notebook is in right now, or MS Hybrid or Optimus mode, you can also set it in the BIOS, but also you can set this in MSI Center. MSI Center is usually more user-friendly. But the BIOS, yeah.
This is the nerd way to do it.
This is the nerd way, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we lowered the power, and well, in the beginning we should see about 90 watts of package power, and that should drop off quite fast to 75 watts. Did you remember the power on the wall?
Oh, I should have written it down again.
Oh yeah.
But it also decreased quite quickly, I remember.
It peaked at 180 and then dropped off.
Yeah, I think 188 was the peak, but I don't know until how far.
Okay, let's see what the peak
off.
now does. $150.
So the peak was lowered almost 40 watts?
30 watts.
Or
yeah.
No?
30, 40, yeah, something
Yeah,
like
almost
38,
40.
Yeah. So also the temperatures, they went up to 91 and then now dropping off to 87.
Jay is asking, by the way, how do you screen capture the BIOS? Like, do you mean like a screenshot, or do you mean like capturing to show what we're doing there? Because we're doing that with a capture card.
Yeah.
And basically what Ruud did
setting.
was setting the capture card as the primary monitor on the notebook.
Yeah.
And that's why it shows on the capture card rather than his
If you want to do
screen.
screenshots in MSI BIOSes, then press F12 and it will save a bitmap image to a USB stick if you want. So you can capture a screenshot quite easily. So what was the performance we had before? It was 18 something, 18.1. Now we are left with 16.1, I would say.
So you do lose some.
You do lose some, yes, exactly. But you will have a quieter system. And did we do the handbrake with this one?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure, but I did handbrake before. Handbrake, and it was 44.7 FPS
Yeah.
with defaults and 43 with this setting.
So there you see the smaller difference again than what you see with the Cinebench.
With the 3D rendering, you will see a larger drop in performance than, for example, handbrake. And I didn't see any performance loss with the 7-zip. And well, the power savings in handbrake was about 35 watts. In a Cinebench, it was about 25 watts, give or take. But it's hard to compare because now it's at a fixed power. Before it just starts high and drops off. So the average power is hard to tell with because you're thermally limited. Now you're not thermally limited anymore, and you just set the power limit you want. Of course, you can lower it even further. If you go to 60 watts, you still have very good performance, but you will lose about 70% in Cinebench and 14% in handbrake. And with this setting, you will only lose like 4% in handbrake and 7% in. That's a little bit more than. I think it's more. It's 8% with this testing. There's one thing we want to show you, and then we're almost done. And that's Afterburner. So if you won't do any, so now the CPU is limited, but it doesn't really matter because in the game it will never reach 75 watts anyway for the CPU. But the GPU will boost to 125 watts. Hey, what's going on?
Alt Enter.
I'll try that. That's different, but not exactly what I expected. Okay, let's. I've had issues with F1 before that it wouldn't do full screen. We're still at 1440p, right?
Should be.
It should be. Hang on. The monitor is 1440p, so it cannot be 4K now. Okay, let's see what the settings do here. It says full screen, but it's not full screen, is it? Confirm changes. Okay, now it's windowed. Accept. Oh. I don't know. Anyway, we'll just leave it like this. Benchmark it.
For the benchmark should be fine.
Yeah. The fans are already ramping up, as you can see in the animation. It's about 38 RPM. The problem is we cannot capture the CPU fan with HW info yet. MSI changed the address of the CPU fan, so HW info doesn't pick up that one yet. We still need to communicate this to the programmer of HW info. So the GPU is 125, 126, hovering there. CPU is not that much, as you can see. It's only like 34 watts and still dropping, sometimes peaking a little bit. So the CPU part is really, really efficient. If you can see the frames per second it's outputting.
Yeah, the consumption is really low.
And the wall is 200.
Like between
3 watts,
200 and
yeah.
210 usually.
Let's say 210, yeah?
Yeah. It hovers a bit up and down between 200 and 210.
So it's already quite efficient. If you look at the AMD system, this is not the AMD system. This is the AMD system. We could lower that to 290 something. So, and the frames per second was about 174, I believe. Okay, we're lower now, so more in the 140s. But this system is consuming 90 watts less, or 80 to 90 watts less, and it already has a screen attached to it. So, okay. So 141, okay. So with this GPU is a 3070 Ti. Unfortunately, the curve editor only allows me to go as low as 700 millivolts. So if I put this, press shift, I can lower the whole thing, and I want it to flatten out at around 1450, something like that. I'm going to pull up this one to 1440, 1456, for example, then press apply, and then it will just square it off. And that's it. that's all you can do. And run it again. If we still have time.
Yeah, if we
One more
quickly
run?
start it right now, then
Okay.
we really have to close it off. I've got class in a while.
Okay. And don't
I s-
expect huge gains or huge drops in power, because it's already really efficient.
That's usually
So-
the thing with notebooks. They're already optimized quite a
Yeah.
bit, so you don't get the gains you can see from like the flagship DIY computer components. Sphera was asking who are the winners so far. Do they get listed? The winners were Hydra Kaiser, Tex Willer, Villain Secto, and we'll announce a last winner after this benchmark.
So
before
now
we
it's
close it off.
175, and we were at 205 or something before.
Yeah, we're
So-
hovering like
Yeah.
200 to 10.
So you would lower it with 20 watts or so, 25
Yeah, a
maybe?
little bit more.
Yeah.
I would say like almost 30 watts.
25, 20, 30 watts?
Yeah.
That's about the amount I got as well. I got 28 watts in my
Yeah,
previous
approximately.
testing. And that's what you can save by lowering the CPU. And but the CPU doesn't lower anything because it's at 29 watts at the moment, so it's not reaching any power limits at all. So only the curve editor part is responsible for the 28 watts saved. So that's, if you're limited with the options on a notebook, you can tweak with Afterburn a little bit, but yeah, we don't know what will happen in the future notebook things, if it will respond the same way as the 4090 does. We don't know, but it's a nice opportunity to try again.
Basically, yeah, we have to revisit this again when new generations get launched. Because it
We-
may indeed differ
We had 141 before. I
in
think.
terms of score. Ooh, good question.
It should be almost finished. And then you can go to class. And now we are 136. So 4 frames dropped, 5 frames dropped. So
But
that's,
around 25 to 30 watts lower.
yeah. So lose a little bit of performance, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, that was our last demonstration of today.
Yeah.
But next week we have a new live stream again, and then we will show you off the Trident X2 in full detail. So we already teased it a couple of streams ago. It's a very nice pre-built system with a small screen in the front. So definitely check that out. We also have one last winner for today. Ruud, the honor is all yours.
Chady.
Chady, congratulations. You also won a Steam wallet code. So to all winners, congrats, and keep an eye on our mailbox because we will email the codes to you in the coming days with some instructions on how you can redeem them on Steam. For now, thank you all for joining, for watching, and hope to see you again next week. Same place, same time, and maybe with a couple of Christmas decorations already. So thank you for watching.
Okay. thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.